So I'm introducing it?
Yes, it's you.
Link is right down here. So
I like APIs.
And we're back. Welcome to episode 6 of the Inbound Reporting Podcast. I'm Jory Monroe, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Hi guys, I'm Nakul Kadaba
Yes.
from HubSpot Services. And we're also joined by Biedrzycki.
Woohoo!
I said the last name right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Nailed
Yes.
it.
He's senior manager on the platform marketing team at HubSpot.
So can you tell us, Al, what that means?
Oh, I sure can.
What do you do, Al?
I don't know.
What do you do here?
I just showed up.
Do you work here?
So what does platform marketing do? So it's interesting. Platform marketing has evolved a lot over the past, let's say, 3 years. I joined it was called Partnerships Marketing back in 2016, just as we launched the HubSpot Connect program, which many folks are familiar with as our integrations ecosystem. It's how we advertise our platform play. I joined with the intent of building a partnerships program around it. So like co-marketing with our integration partners. We had about 20 that were originally part of HubSpot Connect. And since then, HubSpot has put a conscious effort on becoming a platform company. And our team has grown and has evolved into more of a platform marketing, where we market the platform to our customers and prospects, letting them know what's available. But then we also have sort of like a partner marketing sort of lens on it as well, because we market to the partners that are building on our platform, as we call it, Connect Partners, right? So very soon we're going to be focusing more on the developer audience as well. Right now it's been particularly ISVs, independent software vendors. So you see like Wistia, Zendesk, SurveyMonkey as like our big partners. But soon we're going to be opening up so more developers can build and like get listed within our marketplace. So
That's awesome.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
Awesome. So one of the things that we've covered so far is kind of this beast of data collection and management. So we had talked in our last episode about really what can go wrong when it comes to collecting and maintaining your data. And like as HubSpot, as many of us know that work with HubSpot customers, like normally it's very rare that a HubSpot customer keeps their information all in one system. Like businesses today use so many different tools to get the different types of services they offer, but also to like just track their data. So this is actually where you come in, Al, as like the expert, the in-house expert on integrations. So talk to me a little bit more. Something that you mentioned that I don't want to overlook is HubSpot as a platform company. So I know that there are sometimes words that get thrown around, like, is it a suite? Is it a platform? Where are we going? Let's unpack that.
Yeah, so HubSpot is a platform company. What's interesting is like, you're right. Like I think the word platform gets thrown around a lot. And I think like the general audience of people like leveraging and consuming software probably couldn't tell you like definitively what a platform is if you put somebody aside on the street. Like maybe like a HubSpot customer, like what's a platform? I think a lot of
Do you do that normally? Do you pull people off the side of the street? And
We should do that.
Yeah, on my way to work, I'm like,
Let's get B-roll.
What's a platform?
Normally
what's
do
a
that?
platform?
Like, wow.
Yeah, it's a thing I do on weekends.
Just randomly.
But anyway, I think the word is thrown around a lot where even HubSpot, when we first started, we were like an all-in-one marketing platform, but we really didn't have like open APIs or any like programmatic way to like let outside constituencies build on top of HubSpot and actually grow with us. And I think like the word platform, as like the broader world talks about it, is a little fuzzy. I think there's a great opportunity for us to actually be like thought leaders there and help like show what an actual platform is. You look at like Amazon, you look at Shopify, you look at Slack, they've done it because they've empowered hundreds and thousands of developers to build and grow on top of the software like suite that they've built. And I think a lot of folks look at platform as like a single piece of software. It's like, no. Like there's so much more that you have to unpack here to actually become a platform company. And right now, I think we're getting there. But I wouldn't say we're like a fully platform company. I think there's a lot of work that we, exactly. I think there's a lot that we need to do. We're a suite company for sure. We've got Marketing Hub, we've got Sales Hub, we've got Service Hub for sure. We have open APIs. We have over 300 Connect partners that have built on top of HubSpot. But I think there's still a long way to go before we can say like we're a true platform ecosystem that is like empowering thousands of developers to like grow on top of our
Right.
actual platform.
Yeah, and I mean, we had talked about, apart from just what is a platform company versus what is a suite company versus what is that actual definition. Yeah. Last episode we talked about just data collection in HubSpot, right? And what are the challenges associated with it? And towards the end of it, obviously we got to that realization, which we had known. I'm sure all of our customers know this because they're doing it. Not everybody's in the same system. Right. So apart from the obvious of just like connecting systems together, what's the value of integrating?
Shared data is one thing. There's a lot of different layers to it. Early on, like a couple years ago, we did an analysis because we're not like HubSpot isn't monetizing on platform right now. Like you look at like Salesforce with their App Exchange.
Yep.
You know, they can sell through the marketplace. They take a cut of it. Like we don't do that. So what we wanted to do was like quantify the value of platform. So we did like a retention analysis a couple of years ago, and we found that there's a positive correlation between the amount of apps you had installed and a customer's retention numbers.
Right.
So I think back to your point about like, how do you quantify this? How do you like, make this an actual thing? Like I think one of the important parts of the platform is actually like the ancillary benefit of connecting these things together and providing customer value on top of it. Sometimes it's not easy to quantify, especially if you're not doing rev share.
Right.
But a way to do that is to like look at some of the other ancillary benefits. From a customer's perspective, though, like data like in one central source as a hub to like centralize it and to have everybody have the relevant contextual information. That's like probably the customer facing benefit for sure of connecting all these things together. So that like somebody on services, somebody in marketing, and someone on sales has the interconnected data and they share it so that it's all contextually relevant.
Now I remember this like going through because I'm a bit of a techie. I like APIs. I like coding, but I do know that in terms of HubSpot right now, with the current Connect program soon to be the platform, play that we're all doing, there's different types of level integrations, different levels. Could you go through those and just like what's the nuances between the 3 or 4?
Yeah, I think like so. There's a few ways we look at it. I think traditionally, like we've had the integrations, as we've called them, between HubSpot and another piece of software that you could use independently. So like Wistia, you can use on your own. It's a video, piece of software. You can host videos, etc.
Sure.
And HubSpot can connect to it. You can use them interdependently. So that's one type. There's another type that we're starting to see, and I think this is where the true value of platform comes into play.
Sure.
It's the individuals or the developers building apps that are exclusive to HubSpot. So think like, WordPress plugins that you could only use with WordPress because somebody has built it explicitly for that. There's this huge opportunity for developers to build their own businesses by like going to market with us and augmenting our product and innovating. And that's like just another example. And we started to see this pop up more and more as people see like this opportunity to say like, here's a specific use case. Nobody has built this.
Go for it.
Go for it. Especially like in the agency world where there's like agencies that are working with this particular type of client. And sometimes like somebody in the manufacturing space, maybe they have 20 clients in the manufacturing space, and manufacturing clients use this one other piece of software that's not particularly relevant because it's manufacturing like software, but they build an app that integrates between it, and they're like, hey, you know what, like maybe I could like monetize on this by like, productizing it and selling it to like new clients. And they've done that, and they've started to find ways to innovate within this ecosystem by making like specialized, maybe vertical specific use cases and apps for their client base.
I love the focus on like a particular industry example. So like manufacturing, I've seen it at least in my conversation with the customers. Education, that's another one where if they have a developer resource, oh man.
Like if they're like MOOC, like connecting to like classes and stuff, like they can innovate. Like our APIs are open and they can do what they want with it. So that's the added benefit. So that's number 2. So the first one is integrations between 2 like independent pieces of software. Primarily that's what HubSpot Connect was and has been, but now we're starting to see this like real opportunity for people to build interesting things on top of HubSpot that's exclusive to it. And then the third one I'd say is sort of we call them iPaaS. So it's like Zapier, it's like pricing, the ones that connect HubSpot, like they're sort of like the intermediary. They're almost like a piece of software that is the integration that connects it to many other things. And those are interesting because for the most part, if we haven't built or a partner hasn't built an integration between us and another piece of software, sometimes these particular types of integration partners, iPaaS partners, will have hundreds of connections. That makes it easier. So like if a customer's like, do you have a connection to XYZ? And we're like, no, we don't, but you can use one of our iPaaS partners. And chances are they have a connection. That usually works well as the next best thing.
And I mean, that again, from a personal point of view, I've used that, with the kind of those three options. It's like, well, here's your options. It's like, if there's we would call it, I guess, like a native integration, like for that first type. It's like, oh, we have it. Yep. Here it is. Wistia, again, good example. If not, it's like, oh, it looks like there's something with an iPaaS system, right? Yeah. And third, like, oh, you can actually build your own, which I'm sure I kind of just went through like the in order, the simplicity or the amount of time that it would take on an adverse level. Like something native, probably a few minutes, right? Versus a custom, it could be
who knows?
Weeks, months.
Months. Yeah, it could take time, right? It could take time.
That's also kind of so when I was in support, that was almost like our troubleshooting technique as well, where it's like, is there a native integration or a direct integration? Okay, no. Okay, let's move on to like more indirect or like the iPaaS integrations. Like, can we connect this with something like Zapier? Or then it was like, okay, so not one, not two. Do you have a developer? And those conversations would go a little bit differently.
Sure.
But yeah, interesting. So Al, is there such a thing as like too many integrations?
Yeah, I think from a customer standpoint, there could be a lot of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like not like death by a thousand cuts, but like.
Woo.
Yeah, that's very morbid.
There's our weird topic for this episode.
Love
there it is. Thank you, Al.
We always get like a cool phrase.
Some weird thing every episode.
Death by a thousand cuts. Yes.
Wrong phrase for what I tried to describe.
Okay.
It's like information overload where it's like too many options. You know what I mean? Like
too many cooks in the kitchen. Almost.
Yeah. Like so, if a customer is like, okay, so I need to hook up HubSpot to a video solution, and we've got like 30.
Yeah.
Like
that's a lot.
Yeah, where do you start? So like, I think it's a great question because like you could get to a point where the best value for the customer would potentially be something native that HubSpot built because they're already using HubSpot. It wouldn't be like an added cost if they had to buy something independent. But then again, we want to empower developers to innovate and like thrive in our ecosystem. So there's an interesting balance that like I don't think we've mastered and we still need to strike in determining like what is the right amount in a particular category that solves for the customer without like creating just like too much noise. And I don't think we're quite there yet. I have thoughts on like how you can balance that by like introducing reviews and stuff. But then again, like if something has really low reviews, should it be in your marketplace anyways? Like, so there's a lot of like this balancing dynamics that you need to think about in terms of solving for the customer. And I don't know the right answer.
Well, except for that customer, right?
Yeah,
and rightfully so. Like you can't speak for them. But I think like the central point is if you have something like 30 systems, for example, and you're only using six of them. I was going to say 6, but 2.
Generous.
Yeah, right. But it's a good, fair conclusion to say that potential of information overload far exceeds your ability to later visualize your data that you are collecting.
I think there's something to be said about like creating a means for a layman customer to be able to self-select a very good group of solutions that is finite. So like be like, here are the top 5 in this category that are vetted by HubSpot. And there's also a means that if your particular piece of software that you want to connect is not part of this, you can hire a developer, or if you have an in-house developer, you can use it kind of like we were talking about before, just so that like no matter what you want to do, we're going to enable you in a way that you can. And if you don't want to go ahead and build something because you don't have the expertise, we'll provide like the 5 best solutions in that category that have been certified by us to help you with that decision. And I think there's something to be said about like striking that balance of like, you have options, choose your own adventure, and supporting them for whichever route they want to take.
That's great.
I love that.
That's great.
Very cool. So in terms of like, just kind of doubling down on like the recommended ones, for example, do you see that like as you're working through the Connect Partner Program, are there specific types of integrations that are really common for HubSpot users to use?
I think the free ones are pretty easy in terms of adoption.
Yeah.
I think the ones that work the best are the ones that align very closely with the way HubSpot goes to market with our products. We're a
Okay.
freemium model, and I think those partners that have a very similar sort of like, hey, you can connect like the very baseline instance of our software for free to HubSpot to try it out and then upgrade alongside us as you grow. Like, I think those are the ones that have seen the best growth within the ecosystem, because like customers understand how HubSpot works. They understand what like the upsell sort of process looks like.
Right.
And the app partners are kind of like piggybacking on and along for the ride. And I think
That's
that's sort of, clicked the best.
Yeah. And ultimately they're making it easier to collect this information, because somebody may use, I don't want to keep on picking on Wistia, but like somebody may use like a SurveyMonkey, for example, to collect survey data because their business goal is, one of their key metrics is NPS.
NPS, yeah.
Right, yeah. And we know it's going to add to their flywheel by saying, yep, if we just know who our customers are, who like us, great, we can push that delight portion of the flywheel faster to make that easier.
Yep.
That makes sense. So in terms of, so you have a customer, they want to integrate some kind of software. Do you have like any guardrails that, or like questions for vetting in integration that someone can kind of go through?
If they're like in the marketplace and they're
Yeah,
trying to find
exactly.
something. I think right now what information is on a listing page helps guide in a relatively good way. We're making some improvements very soon to like make the listing pages much more robust to help them like guide through that decision, because I think a lot are like, how much does it cost, like what are the reviews, like what parts of HubSpot does it connect to, does it connect to the hubs that I leverage as a customer? I think some of the outstanding questions that like we needed to answer. We collaborated with the HubSpot sales and services teams earlier this year to understand where the gaps were.
Yep.
Like, they're talking directly with customers and they want to like understand, what information can we have on those pages. So they provided that feedback, and now we're like triaging it to make it part of
I remember
that
that
process.
survey.
Yeah.
Did
I think I remember taking that
It's from
survey.
like,
What did you
it's from like
answer?
Q1. It's
Yeah.
been a ways
I remember
coming,
that
but, like,
survey. Yeah.
It'll definitely be helpful for not just like sales and services, but ultimately for the customer.
Right.
As they're trying to make this guided decision. I think there's going to be a world someday where like you can weigh two pieces of apps next to each other and compare. So like Amazon, like when you scroll down to the bottom and it's like, customers like this also looked at these 4 ones, and there's like a table that says like, this is how much this one weighs. This is how what like the average customer review of this one is by stars. Like, I think that sort of marketplace dynamic is what helps the customer make the right decision. And I think we have a long ways to go to get there, but I think that's our mentality. It's like the more context and information you can provide, the easier it's going to be for customers to find the right apps that they need, and for our app partners to like grow, because the customers are actually finding the right things.
And so we were talking about like, this came about because of a need that was seen by our customers to just be able to manage their data better. At the very, very base level, they need to manage their data better. They're not just using HubSpot today. They are using X number of systems in addition to HubSpot, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right? Could you go through, for example, like what was the key pieces of feedback that they gave to kind of drive your process right now towards the platform marketplace?
Yeah.
Like, what was their main complaints? What were the things that they liked so far about the integrations program?
Sales and services or customers?
Or customers.
Or customers?
Customers primarily.
So right now it's just like, it's probably like if you go to Amazon, you realize all like the user like interface things that they have like throughout the pages, and how you can sort and filter, like those things like we don't have. And I think customers are kind of expecting that as they come here. It's like you just have a listing page, and it has information on how to connect and what it does, but like I'm in the market for a video solution, and there's no easy way for me to like, unless I open like 10 tabs on my browser and scroll through each of them and take notes or hire an intern and do it. Like, I think that has been like a biggest piece of friction, especially as we scale.
Pages.
Yeah, especially as we scale, because like the more we add, the more difficult it is to pick between those. And I think we need to offer that sort of like, here's the curated way to like navigate this thing so that you can make the right decision based on your business needs. And whatever like, elements are lacking right now, or, we're working on getting them in there so it makes it a better experience. But I think a lot of the customer feedback that we've gotten, it's like, it's great that you're growing this thing, but it's making it much more harder to navigate and understand like what the right solution is for me.
There's a great image, Al, I'm sure you're sick of this image, but of basically every integration.
Oh,
that
the
is
logos?
The logos, all the logos together.
Yeah.
I would love to like just fade that in for the video portion, because it is it really encapsulates your point where it's like, it is massive.
It's a lot.
And I can understand a customer looking at this and just saying, I'm not going to choose because there's literally 1,000 options.
There's literally a paralysis of choice.
That was the word I was looking for. Analysis paralysis.
All right.
Death by 1,000 cuts. Thank you.
Coming in
That's going to
strong.
bug me all day. So I'm so glad you said that.
Awesome. So when it comes to the marketplace, so you mentioned there was going to be something like a recommendation.
So like there's things we're working on
Cool.
that will definitely help evolve the marketplace.
That's
Can't
right.
disclose what they are right now. Just
That's fair.
all those
Yeah.
things, but
Sure, yeah.
like
Caveat.
but there are like improvements that we are making to make it more Amazonified, more Netflixified, so that customers can navigate it in a meaningful way, and even like just discover things that they didn't know they needed because we can make those recommendations. And a lot of it just comes from like product data and customer data that we can leverage to understand. It's like, hey, well, you know what? You're a nonprofit who's using Marketing Hub and Sales Hub. We've seen other people in your industry using these 3 apps that we recommend. And I think like that's a place that we want to get to, so we can actually proactively rather than like reactively. Because I think a lot of like people in sales and services get on calls and like, does it integrate with this? And like to your point, you go through the checklist of like maybe no. And I think in our ideal world, it's less about like, oh, I need HubSpot to integrate with this, and more like, oh, that's really cool. It can integrate with that. I want to try that, and get to that more proactive versus reactive standpoint.
So say I'm in the marketplace and I see an integration and that sounds like it might fit my business. Where do you recommend in terms, like besides that listing page, going for more information on that specific integration? Like, is that something that the Connect partner tees up on that listing page, or is it something that necessarily because they're a Connect partner is going to live in HubSpot content? Like, what's that next step to do that next level of research on that integration?
So when you're referring to the integration, do you mean like the piece of software itself, like if it was Wistia independently,
or like
the
what's
integration
gonna be
between?
shared?
Yeah, so we're getting to a place where there'll be much more explicit data on like how the integration operates, which hubs it connects to, what data is passed back and forth, is it bidirectional, is it one directional, stuff like that. So.
Cool. Which I think is such an important piece, because as we talk about like data management, understanding exactly what's going to live where.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking about this like narrative switch with HubSpot itself. That's like, instead of all in one, it's all on one. So if you can't really get that information directly in HubSpot, how are you kind of mitigating that for specific integrations so that your reporting doesn't fall to the wayside? Because it's like, if you're working primarily in HubSpot and there are key areas of data like that you might be forgetting that are being collected on your integrations, your reporting strategy isn't going to be as effective as it otherwise could be because you're missing data points.
This is that second part of the challenge that Adi was starting to go into. Native data collection, can go wrong in a couple of ways. Having
there's
to do with human error. There's the actual organization of the property or the field, depending on what system you're in.
Operational errors.
But that third challenge that Ali you're getting at is there's no integration being connected. And Joy, you were saying like if there's no connection, let's say between the system that you're using to collect surveys or watch videos or actually record revenue, for those
Your
very
e-commerce
industry specific systems. There's no integration available, or you just haven't integrated it. Oh boy, how are you actually going to collect information wherever, right, to report it later?
Yeah.
And so, I love the emphasis that your team is making on the developers in particular, because obviously it seems like the number of integrations native or through iPaaS is going to just keep growing over time. And that's great. We should keep doing that. It sounds like the rating system or the way that the new UI is going to look is going to amplify which ones work, which ones don't, what are the advantages, disadvantages, whatever. But for those custom ones, that's usually where, at least from my vantage point, a lot of customers stop because they say, well, I don't have a developer. Right? You would love in that situation, I think I mentioned education as that example industry, for there to be a developer. Sometimes there is, and when that does happen, great. Here's our custom API documentation.
Have at it.
Let's talk through maybe a couple of the endpoints, or if you need to know what you do, have at it, right? And a lot of times, though, you get, we don't have a developer, and it's followed by 5 seconds of silence.
Because then you don't have the value out of that diversity of data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are we doing, I guess, on that end or what are we hoping to do on that end from your team's perspective, Al? That's going to hopefully give them more resources to say, hey guys, like if you don't have this, or you don't have the knowledge, like here's what we're going to provide you.
Yeah, I can't speak for like the grander scheme, but my intuition here says like I think there's a really cool, like if we look at platform and even like service or agency partners as part of the equation, I think there's an interesting like ecosystem overlap between them, where there's some technical agencies like that could be part of this equation as well, especially if a customer is looking for like custom developer work and they don't have the in-house resources. But hey, we have agency partners who can help specialize this, like connect the dots.
Right.
So I think there's some really interesting ways that platforms should be looked at, obviously as like integrations, apps that you can connect, but also like as an ecosystem of things.
Of people.
People,
connected.
Freelancers.
Yeah,
it's just the one
so,
person.
like, it's not just like a product; it's also like services too, right?
Yeah.
As part of this whole thing to provide customer value.
Right.
So I don't know, like if we would have like a directory of developers for hire or something, or like something
like
that.
gig
But
economy
exactly,
kind of,
like something like that. But I mean, eventually we could, and that could be a great solution for somebody saying like, okay, like HubSpot doesn't have the native, iPass doesn't work, I don't have the in-house developer. Oh, let me go to like this
That guy.
Yeah, that guy, and hire him, and make that happen
On a project-related basis. Yeah.
Definitely. So, and I think that's interesting, like because I think it would change also the way people think about data and like the implications of having more different types of data. If you had more of those kind of quick hit, short-term relationships between the different parties that are on HubSpot versus like, I feel like when you go to an agency now, it's kind of implied that might be a longer term relationship versus something like,
it's like
I
a
need
retainer.
to develop. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Like I need a developer now to do this one thing, then we're good.
And what's funny is like, the agency program is sort of the antithesis of that, where it was like, hey, you're an agency that's just doing project work and you can't grow or scale. So like, adopt inbound marketing at the time. That's what we were pushing.
Right.
And HubSpot to build these retainers that could be
Right.
ongoing
For
revenue, and you could grow and scale, hire that next person, get that next client.
Yeah.
And now I think like there's this cool opportunity to like flip that model on its head for people who are like, you know what, I just need that quick fix.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's
There's
just a
one
one-time,
page,
just a one-time piece of work.
Yeah,
Connect that thing
right.
for me, make it happen, and that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And I think there is like a big appetite for that, especially as we grow and scale platform, and customers want to connect more and more things, but we might not have the native solution for them. So.
Yeah. Let's talk more about, I guess, those APIs in general. So we've obviously heard about, the custom API documentation, just because I mentioned it like 10 minutes ago.
API,
But,
API,
yeah,
API.
right. Can you talk us through like what the capabilities of that are if you're connecting a native system that doesn't have, again, a native integration or an iPass with HubSpot?
So we have documentation on APIs. I can't speak incredibly technical to it.
Sure.
I am hiring a developer marketing manager on my team. Free plug. So if you're interested,
Check out the
I was
listing.
waiting for him to do it because we've talked about it before in the past.
So you're just teeing him up.
I kind of did tee him
the
up.
link is right down here. So please apply. So I anticipate that person, like, I'll know enough to be dangerous on
Yeah.
API and documentation.
Yeah.
I expect this person to dig deeper and be the subject matter expert on such.
Totally.
And not like as fully in depth as, say, one of our developer advocates would be, who's actually doing the thing, but enough to
Yeah.
speak to it cohesively. But for what I know, like, our team has been cranking out more documentation around APIs. We have developers.hubspot.com, where you can go and you can dig into all the APIs that we offer across all our products, and it's organized in such a way that like you can see by hub and all that good stuff. So that's always publicly available, and it creates a nice like resource if you're going and spinning up a HubSpot developer portal. You could just leverage those resources as you're going in and building an app within the portal itself. So
Right. And I think the key thing to take from it is just apart from the documentation itself, Al, as you mentioned, like we have a whole site for it, subdomain for it, right? Developers.hubspot.com, which is I always refer to as our developers forum. There's a forum section in there, which has gotten way, way more structured over time, where now I think it is monitored, at least by HubSpot employees, on different issues relating to,
Do you need water?
okay. Where it's monitored by different technical issues. I think I do actually. like I
I'm
just
like
actually
watching
gotta get
it.
water.
I know it is.
Yeah,
It's
right.
very emotional, but
It's very emotional.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Getting
He's
choked
just
up.
getting choked up. Like,
Yeah, right.
we have a whole subdomain, and it's for developers, and it's great.
Hey, you know, I'm very
APIs.
emotionally attached to my work.
Yeah, like I
know
said,
how it
I
is.
really care a lot about this.
You know, inbound is about empathy.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, and apart from that, there's the community section. There's a lot of docs on it. Why are you laughing at me?
stop.
But and within that division, I think I can agree with Al. Like the division between not just the hubs themselves, but also the individual products. So, pun intended, if you actually wanted to build an API with our products from like Sales Professional, there is an API for that, right? There's a bunch of endpoints that you can use.
Right.
There's data that you can pull or push back into the products API, for example. If you wanted to do something a lot simpler, you could probably use our contact properties API. At least from my exposure, a lot of our customers who are building something with a native system, they end up using that because they say, well, I want everything to live on the contact record or this particular object. So you have the contacts, the companies, the deals, or with Service Hub, you have our tickets now, right? If you buy by object. Go ahead.
I don't know if I have like an articulate question about it yet, but it struck me as you were saying that like there are spaces between our products almost, and it made me think of like the flywheel and like the chevrons, right? Those handoffs. Al, have you seen like how often are integrations popping up that kind of act as like the connectors between like Marketing Hub and Sales Hub, or like Sales Hub to Service Hub, to really enablement, right? Like those handoffs between the teams. Like, is that a common type of integration?
It's a great question. I almost see like there's the flywheel and then just like things outside of it, as opposed to like alongside the chevrons and connecting.
Totally.
But I think there are like, especially with like other like pieces of software that integrate directly, I think there are use cases for like different personas, whether it be sales, services, or marketing, that you could tie some of those things together. I think there's something that you said about doing more of that, though, especially as we as a company think about like what's the interconnectivity between marketing, sales, and service. And thinking through, it's like, okay, so like Wistia integrates with that. We'll keep using Wistia. Wistia integrates with HubSpot. You can host marketing videos. Oh, by the way, they have Soapbox, which also integrates with HubSpot, where it engages salespeople as well. And I think there's something to be said about like the individual use case of like bringing those two things together. I don't think we've dug in too much, but I think as we as a company think about that and the use cases for aligning with the chevrons, there's a huge opportunity for us to do that same thing with our Connect partners as well. But we haven't done much. I think there's an opportunity, but yeah. That's good.
Got to be creative, because I think that's a theme that's come up again and again and again. It's these handoffs. So it's interesting as you like talk about like those types of integrations that kind of build like WordPress specific plugins but for the HubSpot ecosystem. Like how, if this is the new kind of mental model we're shifting to, how we can continue to kind of support users by filling in those specific gaps, because we know there's gaps there. We know those teams need to be aligned, but that's a consistent source of pain. So like what's the opportunity?
I think it's on us to like kind of enlighten our app partners to what the opportunities are there as well, because I don't think they're thinking in the same way necessarily. So say for instance, like if you look at like let's see, I have another example. There's an app partner or Connect partner called Org Chart Hub, where basically what it is it just like it can map the organizational chart of a like basically a company that you're prospecting within your HubSpot CRM.
Oh, cool.
And that's helpful for like one, for sales.
I've seen that before.
It's for sales, because like you're like, okay, he reports in, that's a decision maker. Like I know who I need to get bought in and on the phone and stuff. But like from a service standpoint, it's also important too, because like if you start consulting them as a customer, who's on marketing, who's on that, who do I need to loop in, who do I like tag? So like I think there are specific use cases that go across, but like I don't think we've explicitly chatted with our app partners about that's how you position it, that's how you think about it. I think like when we do start improving the existing directory to say like, hey, this app connects to these 3 hubs and here's what it does, then we can start to like educate customers and saying like, here are the use cases for why you'd use it for these particular hubs. Like a sales rep can do this in here, or a services person. And I think that could be on us a little bit to like kind of educate and help our partners understand where the opportunities are. But
for sure.
Yeah, because just to dig into that example, right? Like it'd be interesting for like a service person to know that, because then that can reflect on like your buyer personas and like our
That helps marketing.
right, exactly. So it's like an entire feedback loop.
And then you can start reporting it, because you'd have data to then actually show, here's how many DMs I've talked to in the
And
last.
there will be apps that are
however many.
just specific to one use case.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
sure.
But I think some
Yeah.
of the broader ones, like you could build off of that, right? Like you could think through. It's like, okay, maybe you started like Org Chart Hub started as a way for like sales reps to like map, who's reporting to who. So, but then they're like, oh wait, you know what? Like we can build on our app a little bit more to make it more relevant to people who are working at a service hub. And here's how we can like connect to those APIs. And maybe it's like with the tickets, like the tickets like tags on like who's, you know what I mean? So I think like it could be on us. Like that's another part of like platform marketing's role, as I was talking about at the beginning. It's like how do we enable our partners to know where the opportunities are a little bit better, so that we can guide them on this and they can build the best products available for our customers. And I think that's on us a little bit to do that education and that sort of enablement. So
That makes sense.
Yeah. I have seen like so that's a good example to go into, the types of data or any data that come from these native integrations. Some produce them, some don't.
Yeah.
So for example, something like Org Chart Hub is something that probably natively just remains in your HubSpot instance, and you can use it to just basically map out a company that you're trying to prospect or you're working with already. Is it, I guess, platform marketing's intention to, or your team's intention to try to get all of them to say, or most of them to say, hey, here's one type of data point that will come into HubSpot, and vice versa?
It's a good question. I don't know. Like, I think whatever provides the most customer value, I think that's what we're trying to get at. I don't think it's like connect with all the things and make it all connect with HubSpot.
Sure.
I think it's just like, it kind of goes back to like, almost like product enablement in a way where we can help consult, advise, and like give them ideas on where the most impactful way for them to build would be. And we're still a ways off from that, but I think we could get to a world where like, we know which API endpoints we're opening up based on a product release. We can get ahead of that by holding like a webinar for like app partners and say like, here's what's coming in the next quarter.
Yeah.
Here's what can help you do. Here are some ways to get inspired on what to build. And then maybe run like a promotion. It's like whoever, builds the coolest app or augments the existing app and is graded by us will feature it in the directory or something. I think there's something to be said about like enabling, educating, and then helping promote in a way that we can really pull the lever on, but we're just not there yet.
I was going to say, but that's something down the line.
Yeah.
The webinar piece.
That's something I'm definitely thinking
that you're
about.
thinking about.
It's like especially as we scale, like when we get like hundreds more of Connect partners in our ecosystem, like it's going to be hard to like talk to them on a one-to-one basis. So we got to like figure out a means and a mechanism to let them know like what's coming, where the opportunities are. Because like HubSpot's not going to build all the things. It's another reason why we want to do this platform play. It's like we're going to specialize in what we specialize in, and we see this tremendous opportunity to innovate our product by inviting hundreds of thousands of independent developers to build interesting things on top of HubSpot. But it's on us to figure out the right balance of like where we aren't going to build, where the opportunities lie, and when those opportunities can be available, so that they can get the most out of it and solve for our customers in the best way possible.
Yeah, and I think one of the big takeaways that we haven't explicitly said, so I'm going to explicitly say it, is prioritizing where your processes live in terms of the system. So HubSpot may be doing out of the 5 things, 3 out of the 5 things, and then you may have 2 other or 3 other integrations
that do them really well.
That do those other remaining things really, really well.
Yeah.
You have like a central data piece, hopefully for us it's HubSpot, maybe it's not, but at least a software system that is consolidating all of this in one place, because at least in the context of the inbound reporting framework, because that's what this podcast is about, the next step, which is visualizing your data, is all about saying, great, let's take all the data that was consolidated in all these systems in your tech stack and put it in the system where that is holding all of it.
And I think something that can be said in terms of like the customer side of this is like when you have, whether you're trying to connect a new integration or you have an existing one, maybe you came onto an existing company, that happens, being really critical about like what data is being populated in HubSpot, and like try to get into that mindset, whether you're an individual contributor or on like kind of the executive level of like who could action this type of data. Like in the case of like the org chart, it's very easy to kind of look at data from a very specific lens, but like think about all of the capability of the data that integration is bringing in, and like how the different teams could benefit from having that kind of transparently woven into their process.
Yep.
So it's like also be really critical about the types of data your integration is bringing in. Maybe prioritize some over the other. For example, if you have like a services integration with HubSpot, like clearly your services team might be able to use that. But really start to think about, as we're trying to shift into this flywheel model, how different teams could benefit from that data too, whether that's just on a dashboard that they look at once a month, or if it's like actually changing their process at all. Because again, it's all about the continuous relationship with your customer, not just the pieces.
Right.
Don't think about your data in terms of just the pieces anymore.
Yep.
Right. And the progress against that goal. Like I know
exactly.
from like a personal standpoint, when I was doing that survey, for example,
Yeah.
That your team had sent out, I was always thinking, well, a lot of those situations are, for example, when I'm talking to a customer and they say, oh, we don't have a developer resource available. Now, normally, or in a traditional point of view, I may say, well, we do have, agency partners that can help build this for you. That may be a little bit too expensive for them, as Ali was saying. Now it could be the case of like, here's some like freelance sites that, of one person or two people that can do this for you on a project basis or an ongoing basis. Again, totally up to you. The options are there, but not too many that will paralyze you.
Right.
Or that will leave you, just kind of like not doing anything as a result.
And when you hit that roadblock, I think it's also important to really classify like the types of information you're going after. Like, do you need it in HubSpot? Is it mission critical that your teams have access to it? Is it nice to know? And is it okay if it lives separately? Like, if an integration is absolutely not possible, or would you just like to know it, right? Like, you can prioritize where that data lives. But like really going after those integrations. If like you have to have it in HubSpot, find a way to make it happen in HubSpot.
Right. So Al, what's the growth of like just integration partners in general, taking out the API guys for just a minute?
Yeah.
What's the growth of that looking like for you?
By a partner count, or like installs of said integrations?
Actually both.
So
What can you share?
Yeah, what can you share?
Probably nothing. But we're at about.
It's going up.
Yeah, it's going up.
It's going up, yeah.
It's going up to the right.
Yep.
You have to redact a lot of what I'm saying now. I'm just, so I think we're at, on the integrations directory now, I think we just passed over 330
That's awesome.
Connect partners in the ecosystem. So that's really exciting. I think like, as we focus more on developers and as we open up more APIs and make it easier for people to build and deploy, that number will definitely go up and to the right more. I think a lot remains to be said about like, how we do quality control and how we ensure we solve for the customer. Because like, more isn't always better in this case. Report, like, I think like if you look at like the iPhone, there was this point, because like you look at the iPhone as like a platform, you can download apps and like everything lives in one place, it's all connected. That's a very good analogy to like what we're trying to do. Right. You go to their app store, and before like Apple built their own native like flashlight app.
Yeah.
There was like 30 on there that were all comparable, right? And it's like, it's such a saturated type of thing. And I think what Apple actually did was they built their own. A lot of developers were kind of pissed off by it, but it's like, okay, you're pushing us out of the market because like now you're offering this one, you're offering it for like less than what we are, and now nobody's going to use what we want. And like that's sort of like one of the risks you run with the platform play is like, how do you strike that balance between providing customer value without pissing off like dozens of partners that have already built something,
and your own innovation as like HubSpot or like the company building the platform.
Yeah, it's like the way I look at it is like, by opening up a platform, it's just a giant extension of your product team, and with it comes all those implications, but now with like third parties that are actually building a said thing. Right. So like, now the product team, if they want to build something net new, no longer is it like, oh, I'm going to go build it and do it now. It's like, oh, is a partner already built that? Like, what does that look like? And if I build something, what are the implications on that partner and a relationship with them? And like, how's that going to implicate things? So I think there's just like a lot of considerations to put in place like as you're making those decisions. But back to your original question about growth, we're about 330 Connect partners. Awesome. We have a lot of installs across all of them. I can't share the hard number, or else people will come in like I won't be at work anymore.
Yeah, right. Like,
Goodbye, Al.
Right.
But we're working on means to share those things publicly.
Okay.
Especially
That's
as
great.
more of these like metrics become like part of our core business model. And so we can like showcase the growth on those things. But being a public company and all the stuff that comes alongside it, like we just have to be careful like with the numbers we share.
Of course.
So I have a bit of a fluffy question.
Okay.
But how does your team, like, when you're looking at people joining the Connect Partner program, like, how does it also maintain that, like, HubSpot wants companies to grow better, and that means something. So when we kind of build out this ecosystem, like, how are we making sure that, like, our partners also align with our message?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there's a couple of factors. Like one, we have an app certification.
Right.
So we hold them to the same standards of like a HubSpot product.
Very cool.
Because if they're an extension of our product team, we want to say like we don't do right by the customer. Like if they're
Standards.
Yeah, if they're using an app that's in
Equitable
our
standards.
marketplace, we want to be like, hey, like we uphold the standards of what this app is.
Yeah.
I think two, we also take a critical look at what is the added value that this particular app will add to the ecosystem. And there's a couple layers to that. Like one is, if it is a integration to an independent piece of software, like an integration to like Wistia, we take a look at like what's our shared customer overlap. Because if it's like negligible, maybe it's like less than 50, it's like, okay, like this isn't really serving the best amount. So like, do we really invest in like actually getting them in and listing them and all that stuff? Maybe if it provides like a net new value to those 50 customers and maybe even more on the HubSpot, customer base. But for the most part, if it's like another like video integration, like we want to make sure that we have a pretty generous customer overlap so that a lot of our customers get the value out of it. Otherwise, it's like nobody's going to use it and it's probably not going to see a lot of success.
Okay.
The third thing that we look at, it's sort of like inbound philosophies. Like if they're selling lists, no, they're not going to be part of the program. Like, it's like...
It goes against their terms of service.
Yeah, it goes against their terms of service. Yeah, so like, and there's other things that we're looking at too, like especially as we evolve what the program is and what it means to be a part of like HubSpot Connect. Before we were looking strictly at installs to determine like what your success looks like in our ecosystem and gave you like special placement because you had the most installs. But I think as we, change gears and move into 2020, we're taking a critical eye. It's like, what actually solves for the customer? The customer is like the end user of these said things. What makes them successful? Well, a very like stable app. Something that has very favorable reviews, like social proof that it actually works. Something that's like GDPR compliant.
Yep.
And I think we're going to start looking at some more of this sort of like criteria that solves for the customer and make that as sort of like the merit-based system for like how app partners grow with us.
And I'm guessing you're also looking at this across geographies. So like what may not be applicable here in the US could be applicable, let's say, in Asia Pacific region versus Europe versus
globalization adds a whole new can of worms to the platform, especially because like right now, say we wanted to localize the integrations directory. It's not localized right now, but if we did, like, if a customer is using that and it is localized, what if that software independently, like what if Wistia is not in French? Like it's just, there's so many permutations and so many layers to it that it's very hard to figure out how we actually localize this. We're thinking through what that means, but it's just such a big challenge right now to like, think through where do we even start. So
could you, and you might not be able to share this, but what like percentage of Connect partners are like US based versus non-US based?
I think like, I'd say the majority, like over 75% are US based right now.
Okay.
And then
is that something you're considering like moving forward? Like how to build that international integration base?
Yeah, HubSpot is a global piece of software. We want to like look at what it means to make platform obviously globalized as well.
Absolutely.
But a lot of challenges come alongside it, and it's definitely something we want to do. But like the thing is, it's like the added layer of having all these partners build on top of it just adds so many more factors to like how you go and globalize something. Like if you want to like globalize a new HubSpot product, like you have to soup to nuts globalize the whole thing. It's like, you have to have a sales team that can support that language. You have to have a services team that can do it. You have to have marketing collateral. The website needs to be localized. Like it's all that, but then multiply that by however many partners you have in the ecosystem and like
and however many languages.
Yeah, exactly, that you want to. Because they might not support several languages, and then it creates another whole like thing where like who supports the integration. Like right now we have Connect partners support the integration if something goes awry. That's usually the protocol. Unless HubSpot's built the integration, we'll support that. But otherwise it goes to the app partner. But what if they say the the app is in French, and it is, but they don't have support in French.
Right.
And then our customer's mad.
What do you do?
You know what I mean? Like, it creates a
He's mad
bad
at
customer
HubSpot.
experience. Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many little layers and nuances to it.
And that's part of your QA.
Yeah.
I mean, getting back to the original question here, is like that's part of your QA of what you take into account when adding somebody else in to the team.
That's a very good point too. It's like, how well do they actually support our shared customers? Because at the end of the day, like, we want our customers to be successful. So like, we want to make sure that it all ties back to that. So
Yeah.
Makes sense.
A lot of
Very
takeaways coming in for this, but most importantly, of just what is HubSpot doing to become a platform company? The types of integrations that are available to HubSpot customers, right? The growth of it. Thank you, Al. But also, like, how are you going to be doing this to manage the data in one central spot, right, across your tech stack, right, to later visualize, which is going to be the last 2 episodes. After this,
when you get to the nitty gritty,
when you
widget report.
Yes, when you actually start to say, great, I've got my data in one place and it's all managed correctly and these systems are working for me and I don't have anything too extra. I have just the right amount of systems that I need. Because
your integrations data is like such a key piece to the system, because it's like, if you cannot trust the data, then the reports are literally meaningless. And I feel like this is where a common like breakdown of like data integrity can happen, is if you're with your integration, you're not getting the right type of data or the whole picture with their data. But you have 2 platforms or more that share key parts of that story. Like, your reporting can become meaningless because it's not accurate to what's actually happening with your customers.
Right. Good segue into the follow-up. So generally, we'll have a couple of the resources that Al mentioned, in the blog post and or I say show notes, rather. Show notes. But the asset will be a diagram asking you to share your most important integrations, what they are.
What are you using?
What are you using? What data is stored in them, and in what form, and how you're bringing it into HubSpot.
And what you're storing in HubSpot.
And what you're storing in HubSpot. We also want to see what your business goal is with those key metrics so that we can kind of compare that. If you'd like to give that along with your portal ID to us for feedback, just email us inboundreporting@hubspot.com. We'd love to give you some feedback and love to see that. Otherwise, I don't have anything else to add, Joy.
Thank you, Al, for joining us.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Of course.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Take care.